We're live, Jametta.
Hello and welcome to the COVID313 Community Coalition for Families and Youth. We're delighted to have you join us now in our 11th week during this pandemic. We're going to hope that you get settled because we have a particularly important and we believe powerful message to share with all of us today. But before we start, we want to make sure that all of in our audience have the opportunity to hear and to participate. So first, we'd like to make sure that we have Spanish translation. Cindy, please share the phone number for Spanish translation.
Si necesitas traducción en español, por favor habla al 313-626-7440, 313-626-7440. Hoy la señora Gloria Rosas y Cristina Ruiz Mazón harán la traducción.
Thank you, Cindy. Saeed, would you please share the number for Arabic translation? We'll come back to make sure that we have Arabic translation as well. But in the interim, Julie, would you please make sure that we have ESL translation as well? Thank you. Family, we are in a moment. We are in an extraordinary time in this nation. And what we have been witnessing over now almost 7 to 8 days is extraordinary. And we would not be who we are as the COVID Coalition, representing change agents, community organizations, faith-based organizations, and foundations, if we didn't stop and say, enough is enough. So in today's segment, we're going to have a special set of voices representing all of us, particularly African Americans, people of color, people of goodwill who know and recognize that Black lives matter, but also what we do collectively right now matters. And I'd like to share with you the reality that what we see in the streets in terms of police brutality is part of a much longer and historical continuum of depression. But one artist brings this to mind, and no doubt you've heard this. It's the question, what happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or does it fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat, or crust and sugar all over, syrupy sweet? Or maybe this dream, it just sags like a heavy load. Or does it explode? We're here with you today to talk about both the history, the context, and the explosion of power and rebellion and pain and frustration and hope that is amongst all of us, not only in the United States, but so wonderfully across the world, are in this moment with you. And we are here in this moment with you as well. So at this point, I'd like to move us forward in our agenda. We're not business as usual. We have been called, and so have you. And to help us think about this calling, this opportunity to carry on the legacy of struggle and fighting oppression and racism and white supremacy and getting outcomes that matter for our families now, I'm pleased to bring one of our former and founding members of the 482 Forward Coalition that's helped to bring us all together. And that is Arlisa Hurd, who is going to share, so importantly, a mother's view. Arlisa?
Thank you, Jametta. Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Arlisa Hurd, and I am choosing to remember Malice Green and Tamir Rice. I am a mother of 2 sons, 2 Black sons. Listen to that, 2 Black African-American sons. I don't even have to say anything else behind that statement because you already know what it means. And why is that? I say it's because America has spent too many years filling in the rest of the sentence when it comes to Blackness in this country, especially Black boys, Black men. In this country, Blackness has been the substitute for all things criminal. Anyone showing up in Black skin seems to trigger the myth of danger. You don't believe it? I got a couple examples for you. A Black man on an elevator or walking by. Notice a woman clenching her purse a little bit tighter? Or what about Black teenagers, particularly Black boys, hanging out at the local mall? They're considered to be a gang or even thugs. Or what about a group of Black males on the front porch of a residence or in front of a gas station or a store just talking? There's something illegal got to be going on, right? They got to be doing something. Or I think the worst insult of all, what about wearing a hoodie in public? Remember that? Imagine a simple fashion statement became a mark of death because it was made to be the identifying factor of being criminal and Black. Apparently, when Blackness shows up, a dangerous threat shows up too. And this threat is not just perceived by some in law enforcement, it's private citizens too. I mean, just going for a jog, barbecuing in the park, sitting in the lobby of a hotel, even cashing a discrimination lawsuit check at one's own bank is reason enough to be suspicious and call the police. This country has attached value to race. In fact, when Blackness shows up, too often the individual is not even seen at all. Black skin is made to feel invisible, discounted. Now, I want you to pause for a second, because I don't want you to get intellectually dishonest on me right now and start saying that I don't see race. Yes, you do. We all do. How could you not? Race is embedded in the very fabric and psyche of our being. In this country, it has become the American way. The historical racial teachings and messaging says Black people are lazy, poor, incapable of feeling pain, unteachable, unintelligent, great entertainers, great sports players, lustful savages, physically strong, and dangerous. And just in case you don't know where all that came from, during the era of slavery, phony science and unsupported medical opinions were used to justify slavery and ultimately solidify these labels. Black skin became synonymous with abnormal, dumb, childlike, and having a need to be governed, ruled, subjugated, inferior. Unfortunately, these same labels continue to fuel white supremacy, racist attitudes, and racist perceptions to this day. So, as a Black mother raising Black children, I'm saying to you, we can no longer be comfortable being silent. Don't just let this stuff happen in front of you. Confront it. Confront the differential treatment, racial slurs, and sideline conversations, because contrary to popular belief, racial violence and injustice is not just about Black people, it's about Pastor Simmons.
My name is, I am Reverend Larry L. Simmons Sr. I'm senior because I am the father of 8 sons in a blended family. My wife brought 3 and I brought 5 to our family. 5 sons. I've been a Black man for 73 years in America. I am a follower of Jesus. And I am pissed off. There is a rage that we all share as men. It's a rage that we tuck behind our ties and our Brooks Brothers suits or our wherever we get them. We tuck it behind our coveralls. We tuck it behind our smiles. We tuck it away, but it seethes in us because when we are young and thrown up against a wall and told by police officers, I don't want to see anything but elbows and when we are grabbed by our genitals with no recourse and have jokes made about the size of our genitals. These are not made up stories. This is my life. This is what Larry Simmons lived. And I'm going to tell you, most of my friends who walked this path with me are long dead. They died from drug overdose and they died from murder. This rage first turns in. We fuel it, it eats us. But sometimes, like Langston Hughes says, it explodes. And what you are seeing today in the street is the righteous anger of centuries of abuse. I remember Mark Clark. I remember those babies now being held in pens, captives at the border of this country. And we should have been in the street 7 months ago when they started caging these babies like we're in the street today. And that rage that we witnessed over and over and over has spilled out. Let me tell you something. The first thing your oppressor will try to take from you, any oppressor, is the right to be angry and express it. Well, I'm here today to tell you, you got a reason to be mad, and don't let nobody tell you that you shouldn't. Yes, we should protest. Yes, we should pour out into the street. But this is a moment for us to build. I am so encouraged by the leadership of these young people who will speak truth to power. And so as a Black man, 73 years in, the father of 8 sons, the father of 8 grandsons, I want to say thank you. Thank you, young people. And don't let anybody tell you that you should shut down or shut up. Stand up. We've had enough. We've had enough. Nkenge.
Nkenge, if I may, we want to make sure, just before we begin this segment, that we also have the Arabic translation. So if we could pause very quickly, Saeed, if you would share the number for Arabic translation.
إن كنت بحاجة للترجمة إلى اللغة العربية، الرجاء الاتصال على الرقم 313-241-7030. الرقم مجددا هو 313-241-7030. وشكرا. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And this is a dialogue that we want to be two-way. So audience, we want you to know that you can put questions or comments in the Facebook chat. You may also text us at 313-288-2082. Text us at 313-288-2082. Let the power continue.
Hello, everyone. I'm Nkenge Browner. I am also the mother of 2 Black boys. And today I remember Miss Corinne Gaines. Instead of speaking today, I'm going to let my poetry speak for me. This poem is for Black boys. In order for something to receive protection under the Endangered Species Protection Act, it must be endangered or threatened by at least one of the following factors. 1, a decrease in natural habitat. 2, inadequate protection from man-made factors affecting its survival. 3, overutilization for scientific or educational purposes. See, one of 3 of these threats would save an elephant, a rhino, a spider. But Black boys get natural habitat gentrified. Black boys be subject up to Tuskegee experiments. Black boys learn to run with their hands up, heads low, and still ain't made no protection list. We've demanded no action. I'm raising a Black boy, and sometimes I pull his clothes out and search for the bullseye. Sometimes I make him practice holding his hands up real high. Wiggle your finger, son. I've painted his inhaler red so it doesn't resemble a weapon. Cops and robbers have been replaced with cops and Black boys, and you might be tempted to call this a war zone. But let me remind you that in war, both parties are armed. Both know what they're getting into. Both have eyes on their enemy. This is no war. This is hunting. Cops in camouflage, Black boys running free until they don't. How I wish you were the animal you get caught. Instead of my son, I wish you were a rare tree. I would chain myself to you and demand we honor your importance. I call my baby boy Elephant. This is no cute pet name. This is me trying to convince the general public that he ought not be shut down in his prime. This is me calling him anything but a Black boy, anything but the child of a woman named Nkenge. Don't Black mamas have no mercy? No rides to the clinic, no access to birth control. Why we keep having these Black boys who die so young, they mamas buy caskets with baby shower gift cards. Black boys are dying before their school pictures come back. Why they coats still big, we keep lying to them. Baby, you gonna grow into that coat. Black boys ain't growing into anything, ain't feeling nothing but cemeteries. Get funerals, get hashtags, get they pictures on t-shirts, get everything but older. Black boys make the news, make they 12-year-old cousins pallbearers, make hoodies into political statements, make they mamas do more than just consider rioting, make they mamas do more than just consider the riot. When all the Black boys are gone, when we can only find their bones, will we display them in glass cases or take those bones to museums and continue to hang them? Thank you. I'm gonna open the floor for Ephraim.
Apologies, everyone. My internet connection within my house is leading to me having issues showing my face, which I apologize for. Again, my name is Ephraim Clark, and the reason that my face matters more today is because I am a Black man, along with being a Black mentor and a Black mentee. As we sit in these moments, oftentimes as Black men, Black people, we can feel powerless because there's so many different angles of discrimination and hate that come our way. As we continue forward, we want to make sure that we're able to see the power that we have within ourselves, that we can grow within ourselves, and that there's something that we can do. So I've been telling individuals for so long that what they have to do more than anything is find that power within themselves, within what they do, within whatever their craft is, within whatever they care about. Because I remember Eric Gardner, and to see a man say that he can't breathe is just something that I continually run into every day myself. So as we sit and we talk about what we all can do as Black people, as human beings, I want us to sit and really think through what are those actionable steps that we can take. For example, there are opportunities to where you can lift your own children up, encourage them, encourage their curiosity, encourage their minds to be more than just individuals that are victims, but empower them to feel as if they can make change in this world. We have individuals like Amanda Alexander, who is the Black woman that is leading the Detroit Justice Center, that is helping to get so many of these protesters that are jailed out on bail. We also have individuals like Rashida Tlaib, who represents the squad that comes from our own Detroit, who represents and wants to make sure that individuals that are protesting are able to be heard. Again, I apologize for the missing of my face, but I feel as hearing my voice and seeing this Blackness should show you more than enough that we all stand in unity. With that being said, I pass this to Terry, and I pray you all have a blessed day.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Terry Woodfield. I am the son of William and Rosalind, grandson to William and James and Hazel, William and Bernice, brother to Catherine, William, and Donald, and a Black man in this world. One thing that we must remember is that there are things that we can all do to play a role in tearing down the system that holds us down. Everybody has a role in combating racism and implicit bias within our organizations, our churches, our government institutions, and within our own community. My name is Terry, and I remember Michael Brown. One thing that we can do is commit to check our list of places to find and support in becoming anti-racist and becoming a non-anti-Black male. No, those things that help us to counter the messages and the things that we have internalized throughout our lifetimes. We can push for police oversight from the victims of police brutality, allowing the creation of a victims review board that gives them an opportunity to come to closure of their own trauma while also impacting the system itself. We also have opportunities to impact our families with those saleable truth moments by engaging in those courageous conversations with loved ones. When you hear them make statements that give and spread false stereotypes about African Americans, either from African Americans or others, and speaking truth in that moment. Silence is a complicit action that allows these lies to continue. And today we cannot allow ourselves to be silent anymore. I now pass it over to Chandra.
Thank you, Terry. Hello, all. My name is Chandra L. Marshall, and I am a Black woman representing the culture. I choose to remember today Simone Marshall. Shortly, we will hear from some of our own allies, which will ground this segment in action. I speak to allies. There are often questions posed. What can I do? And we collectively would like to share a few recommendations. Number one, in writing, answer this question to yourself. What would it cost you to confront anti-Black comments made by your family and friends in your presence? Let me be clear, this is not a rhetorical exercise. Make the list and take the action. Number two, if you are going to show up to support Black actions, check in with the leadership and take their instruction on what support they want provided. Leave your personal agendas in the car. Number three, educate yourself. Learn about implicit bias, the history of slavery, historically and modern, and the impact of systemic racism on African Americans in every space that we enter. Given these recommendations, I encourage all allies to make a plan. Set your schedule and make it happen. Be intentional. Again, take the action. Our allies have listened to us and adopted our recommendations. Please pay close attention as they are modeling the recommendations to listen and follow the leadership of the community on this issue. In this space today, we are modeling what we think is necessary in this moment and to encourage others to do the same. Now, you've heard from us. I pass it off to Jametta.
Thank you, Chandra. And in my excitement to move us forward with this powerful agenda that we have today, I neglected to let you know that I am a blessed woman. I am the daughter of James Henry Monroe Jr. and Loretta Harrison Boyce. I am the daughter of many who have nurtured me and given me a sense of who I am over many stages and over many nations. I'm also blessed to be the CEO of the Detroit Parent Network. You have just heard some powerful voices from our colleagues, Elisa Hurd, Reverend Larry Simmons, Terry Whitfield, Ephraim Clark, and Dr. Chandra Marshall. We'd like to, at this point, make sure that we open up to hear from you. Again, if you would like to share some comments or questions, you can do so in the Facebook chat. You may also text us at 313-288-2082. After this segment, we will move into hearing from our allies, because all struggle needs allies to move us forward. And the struggles of Black people in this country has always historically raised the opportunities for all. And with that, I want to pause and reach out to our co-moderator, Christine Bell, to see if we have any questions. Christine?
Hi, Jametta. So I am going to ask Larry if he will come back on, and Jametta. And we've been asked on Facebook, will you publicly denounce all political repression against demonstrators by DPD here in Detroit? Will you join the campaign to defund, #defund-the-police here in Detroit? That's over $300 million that we can use to fund housing, recreation, and healthcare. Do you two want to speak to this?
I certainly will.
Thank you.
First off, I absolutely unequivocally condemn oppression. Unequivocally. If you want to talk about an alternative means for providing safety to the community, I'm down with that. I'm good with that. But I think we need to do that. That is the conversation that we need to have. And we need to be clear that our community, the community I represent in Brightmoor, the congregation I represent at Baber Memorial AME Church, want to feel safe. They don't feel safe today. And so talking about a better way to help our community feel safe, I'm down with that. And definitely, I oppose all forms of oppression. Not, well, all forms of oppression. I'm not even gonna explain it. All forms of oppression. Jametta, did you want anything?
Yeah, I think I would like to say that we know police brutality has been historically an issue that is often aimed at the Black community. It's also been aimed at those who protest the status quo since the beginning of this country. I think we all have a responsibility to talk to and demand from not only our Detroit officials, our county, our state, and nationally, that the police are functioning as an extension of the community to help protect us, but to do it with the community. And so I absolutely support the statement that Reverend Simmons made, but I'm also challenging us that we have to come to the table to talk about what is our vision, and then make that vision happen. Christine?
Thank you, Jametta. That's all the questions that we have at this time. Thank you both for your answers.
Thank you very much. And then what I'd like to ask Molly if she would do, as we wrap up this segment of African-American voices speaking in this moment, if she would share some slides with you before we transition into our very important allies section. Thank you, Molly. These slides will be available, and thank you to DPTV, who's been serving as our communication arm. So we want to share these resources so that we can free our mind for the battle that we're doing now and ahead. And speaking of battle, it's marvelous. It is wonderful to be part of such a coalition that has so many people ready to battle on so many fronts against oppression. So now I will yield to Angie Reyes, Director of the Detroit Hispanic Development Corporation. Angie.
Thank you, Jametta. It's hard to not be emotional in this particular time, listening to our Black brothers and sisters and their powerful words. But again, I'm Angie Reyes, and I remember Trayvon Martin. And so I struggle with how to even introduce ourselves in this moment. Mexican, Puerto Rican, Dominican, Caribbean, Central and South American, Chicano, Boricua, Indigenous, Afro-Latino, Mestizo, or Hispanic, Latino, Latinx. We aren't even sure what name to call ourselves that isn't rooted in our own oppression. But what we do know is that our history has been intertwined with that of our Black brothers and sisters for the past 500 years. We have all experienced the impact of systemic racism and oppression, but it shows up differently in our different communities. And if we're honest with ourselves, there have been many times when we have also contributed to racism against the Black community. And again, I mentioned Trayvon Martin. There remains a lot of internalized racism and colorism in our community, even between ourselves and within our own family sometimes. We need to have long, hard conversations about our past in order to have a chance of a free future for all of us. So the question in this moment is, how do we show up right now for our Black brothers and sisters? As allies, what is our role right now? How do we follow the leadership of our Black brothers and sisters in this moment? So here to talk a little bit more about this is my longtime colleague and friend, Ozzy Rivera, a lifelong community and cultural activist in Southwest Detroit, a retired community organization director, part-time social work instructor at U of M, and an instructor of Afro-Latino studies at Wayne State University. Ozzy.
Thank you. So,
we hear you fine.
okay then. First of all, thank you for this opportunity to delve ever so briefly on a major theme which most do not take adequate time to explore. My work these past few decades has been guided by the belief that what helps to build allyship between communities of color is to look at what common history and bonds we have, so as to understand what at times has been the basis for differences and difficulties in that relationship. A lot of that personal political journey for me has been influenced by my own family history, cultural background, being from the Caribbean, I'm Puerto Rican, and being a light-skinned member of an immediate, multicolored, and extended multiracial family. There's an old axiom we used to express back in the 70s in my early days of activism: we must fight the attempt to divide and conquer us. Thus, we have to educate ourselves and others in order to organize for effective coalition between communities of color. At various times in our history, Latinos have been strong allies with the African-American community to fight for our common rights. But at other times, division over particular interests, as Angie mentioned, colorism, and even racist beliefs have hampered that. That often varies based on the specific Latino ethnic group and historical period, though I definitely do not want to deny or minimize these difficulties. I will focus more on what should lay the basis for increased unity. I believe if you don't know your past, you don't understand the present, and then are not prepared for the future. So, did you know that the majority of people with African and Native American heritage in this side of the world come from and or live south of what is now the Caribbean and South America, Latin America? That the first free Black community in what is now the US was in St. Augustine, Florida during Spanish colonial times. That the taking of Texas in the Mexican-American War, which meant that Mexico lost more than half of its territory to the US to become what we now call the Southwest, that in addition to being a land grab, was a direct prelude to the Civil War 20 years later. That slave owners grabbed more territory to expand their power, and that they had a bad reaction to the fact that by the time of the US Civil War, Mexico already had two Black presidents, Vicente Guerrero and Juan Maria Morelos, and an indigenous Indian president, Benito Juarez. That definitely scared them. That was a threat to them. That the premier institution for nationwide study, a worldwide study, in fact, of the African experience in the world was established by a Puerto Rican immigrant before Puerto Ricans were US citizens, Arturo Alfonso Schomburg. That Thurgood Marshall referred to the successful Mendez case of the late 40s in California and a previous mid-1930s case regarding Mexican Americans in Texas during the famous 1954 Brown versus Board of Education Supreme Court case that officially eliminated school segregation. That one of the first two Latino communities in Detroit, established in 1918, was an Afro-Puerto Rican community which originally settled in Black Bottom and eventually integrated into Detroit's own African American community. That the AIDS struggle of the late 80s and early 90s in Detroit specifically was essentially an African American and Latino coalition led by CHAG, AIDS Partnership, Latino Family Services, and others. I could go on, but you get my point about this common history. Let's use this history to guide us in new measures and struggles, and realize that we can overcome if we really pay attention to the divisions among us. Thus, in our aim to build a coalition must address the following matters that all have a racial impact on us: the outright coddling of white supremacists by Trump and many elected officials, the lack of a national response to the COVID pandemic, which essentially is hitting our communities the worst, to address the call for militarization to quell the current national movement. Even the response to Hurricane Maria's impact on Puerto Rico was devastating, and Puerto Rico's an Afro-Taino nation. Trump was kicking off his presidential campaign, lashed out at Mexicans with racist taunts, and from the very beginning, escalated this racism. We have our work cut out for us, but I'm so inspired by young people, and these are new folks that are to the struggle, and veterans who, hopefully can give some guidance. So I thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Ozzy, for all that history and knowledge that you shared with us. And I want to kick it off to our white allies and comrades. Lindsay.
Thanks, Angie. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear and see you.
Okay, awesome, thanks. I'm used to be behind the scenes. All right, thank you, Angie. And thank you so much to our Black and Latinx siblings for taking your time and labor to share all of that pain, passion, and the resources with us. And thank you for calling on us to continue the conversation with white folks about how we should be contributing to the movement. How I want to start off this message to white people is that racism is not a people of color problem, it's a white people problem. We need to unlearn everything we were taught as white folks in order to undo the ways in which we hold up and benefit from racism. Dismantling white supremacy is our job. We built these systems and we continue to benefit from them. We've been propping them up, so it's time to start to tear them down. It's not enough to simply be not racist. We have to push ourselves to be actively anti-racist. It takes work, it creates tension, but it will ultimately be liberating for ourselves and for our Black and brown siblings. We need to ask ourselves every day, what does it mean to be white in this world, in this country? And then we need to do the work of following Black and brown leadership to dismantle the systems that are harming Black folks, including dismantling the police systems. Today, I'm thinking about Breonna Taylor as we respond to this call to action from our Black colleagues. Again, I want this to be really clear. We must follow the leadership of Black and brown folks as we are fighting. Stop and listen. And as the white folks who are part of the COVID313 coalition, we're being called to action now. Our Black siblings are asking us to do the following things. Molly?
Thank you, Lindsay. And thank you to our Black and Latinx COVID313 siblings for your vulnerability and your call to action, and the continued fight for justice that I know you carry with you every day. My name is Molly Sweeney, and I am the Director of Organizing of 4A2 Forward. And I'm speaking today in remembrance of Tamir Rice. I grew up outside of Cleveland, and Tamir Rice, a young, beautiful Black boy, was murdered at the hands of the Cleveland police for playing with a toy gun. If you are coming to a rally for Black folks, check in with Black leadership before you start using the movement for Black lives to run our own white agendas. We are asking you to listen to the demands and asks of our Black leaders and their response to police accountability. There are many asks out there to donate and to support the campaigns of leaders of color in your own community and across the nation. It is our time to listen and to act on what they are asking of us. Black folks are calling to us to not unpack our white experiences or emotions with Black leadership. Do not have Black folks care for our white tears or our white emotions. Find white friends like myself for that. We are here for you. Don't put that emotional labor on our Black and brown friends. Our role is to show up in the movement for Black lives and to do our work outside of the Black community to show up in a healthy and supportive way. The system of racism is not just the overt racism we often point out, like the Ku Klux Klan. It is the everyday system that is the foundation of our country. The police, our schools, our courts, our homes, our workplaces, everywhere. It is the foundation of how our systems function to benefit white folks. It shows up in our individual interactions and in these systems. That's called white supremacy. And it's on us to tear it down and destroy it. Everywhere we see it, including in ourselves, from the White House to inside our individual bodies. If we aren't fighting that system, we are complicit with the murder of Black lives. That's why I denounce the treatment of Detroit Police Department against Black people, against protesters, and we call for the defunding and divestment from police systems, including school police. We should not sit back idly and watch our community spend more money on policing Black bodies than funding our schools. Detroit spends $3 million on police. Can you imagine what that would go towards if we were funding the real supports our communities need? Our schools spend $10 million on a separate police department. That money needs to go to the liberation to support our Black communities, not policing brown and Black people. White people join the fight to defund and divest from police. Youth I work with are launching a campaign to defund the police. We urge you to get involved. Ann Braden, a white activist, wrote a quote about 30 years ago, and it said this: "We do have a choice as white people. You don't have to be part of a world of lynchers. You can join another America. We urge you to join the other America with us, other white allies." Marty?
Thank you, Molly. This is Marty Fishoff, and I'd like to remember Ossian Sweet. We all know that anti-Black violence is nothing new in this country. It's got a 400-year history, and Ossian Sweet is one of the most tragic moments in Detroit's history. So if you don't know who that is, please, I encourage you to read about him. We ask you that you interrupt racism in your families and communities. Do not let relatives say racist things. Instead, invite more folks to join the movement. That means we must interrupt racism wherever we see it, in ourselves, in our families, in our workplaces, and in our communities. This also means widening and building our base of white people who are in the movement. We need to call our folks into the movement in our families, faith community, neighborhoods, and workplaces. If we work in an organization where the leadership is predominantly white, we need to actively work to change that balance of power. We must speak up for diversity and against racism and not expect that to be the exclusive responsibility of our Black colleagues. In all these places, we need to question whenever white supremacy and racism show their ugly faces and challenge it. It might feel good to just yell at white people, and we should when we see racism, but we need to spend time with those who are awakening and invite them to be part of this movement, imperfect as they are. That is our work, not the work of people of color. Christine?
Thank you, Marty. I'm Christine Bell, the Executive Director of Urban Neighborhood Initiatives, and I remember Rodney King. The third thing that we're asking is we must make the commitment for the long haul. This is not a moment to jump into the movement and jump out. We need to fight racism for a lifetime. This means being uncomfortable, taking risks, changing as individuals, and it means listening deeply to our Black and Brown community members. We must unlearn and continue to learn how to show up differently as white people. We must have the courage to create tension in our white communities and in ourselves to be different. That tension is rooted in the love for Black and Brown communities and ourselves. Racism is like a poison we carry that we can kill people with, but it also makes us sick. We must break open ourselves and communities today and ongoing. We have been complicit in the murder of George Floyd, Tamir Rice, Tony McDad, Breonna Taylor, Trayvon Martin, and countless others. We must and we can do better. And we are here to support and hold any white person accountable that is willing to take the step to dedicate themselves to anti-racism, as imperfect as you are. We must do this because it is our job to dismantle the racist systems that we built. As a white person, we urge you to make the commitment to do one of these two things. We're dropping them in the chat. There's 5 different things that you can select. And we are also posting a resource in the chat that we have found really useful during this time. White folks, tell us if you need support. We are here. Cindy?
Hello, my name is Cindy, and today I remember Ayanna Jones. Ayanna was shot in the head when Detroit Police Department raided her home on the east side while she was asleep on her couch. Now, our Black COVID313 siblings have also asked us to tell you to do one more thing. Write down 3 things you have been taught about Black people that you know are wrong.
Do that right now. And then make a commitment right now to talk to 2 people you know and challenge their racism and narrative that you know are wrong about Black folks, and invite them to join you in being anti-racist.
We also want to encourage allies to create spaces where each group can deal with their own internalized racism and heal, so that we know how to show up in this movement, because we all have a part in this movement. It's gonna take us all to dismantle the systems of racism. And it's on us to fight this anti-Blackness. Co-liberation takes all of us. I'm gonna ask all of our allies to turn on your camera. And together, we say, Black Lives Matter.
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 They matter.
Black lives matter.
matter.
La vida
Black
negra
lives
es importante.
matter.
La
And
vida
I wanna
negra.
We've had enough.
Black Lives Matter.
And I want to say in Arabic, so مهمة هي حياة السود. Black Lives Matter.
At this point, and I hope you're feeling it too, in marketing, they call it a master class. Collectively, we've just had a master class in what it means to speak truth to power, to share vulnerability, to talk about history and put things in context, and at the same time, be specific and general enough that there's a place for all of us to become warriors in this quest. But at this point, again, we want to hear from you. Again, you can put your questions in the Facebook chat. You can also text us at 313-288-2082, 313-288-2082. We'll pause a few moments to see if we have some questions before we go into our regular segment. It's all about knowledge that we use for power. Christine, do we have any questions?
We do. And so the first question that I would like to ask, and I'm going to ask Larry and Angie, and maybe Ozzy wants to turn on their cameras. I know that this is something that we've wrestled with for the last week. And the question, it's a question and a comment. So, but I know that you all have thoughts on this. Someone commented, feeling really bad about what's going on. But how does the African American community feel when kids are separated from their parents and there are peaceful protests and nothing changes?
I want to speak to that if I can, and then I'll yield to that old dude over there.
Thank you, Larry.
Ozzy and I have known each other for a couple of 3 decades.
Yeah.
I said in my remarks that there is a badge of shame on us as activists, that when they started caging those captives at the border, that we were not out in the street as we are now for George. And I call him George because I want to remember he was a guy, like one of my sons, like one of my friends. So I absolutely agree that we've got to act. But let me tell you something. When we have a different leadership in this country, that's going to change, because nobody is going to get elected in this election who does not guarantee humane treatment for people who are seeking asylum in this country. That is a non-starter. If that's not in your platform, if that's not part of what you come to communities and promote, then you cannot expect to be supported. This is intolerable. It's unacceptable. Looking at children in cages, it brought tears to my eyes, literally. But I think with the murder, with George's murder, I really believe the lens of America has changed. And I think when we bring this subject back, as well we should, because it's not like they stopped, they're actually getting worse. Yep. I think people will be more responsive to this. And I, for one, have no problem connecting out loud what is in fact historically connected, and that is the treatment of immigrants at the border and people of color in the country through the brutality of police. Those are connected. That's my response.
I would agree with Reverend Simmons. I want to do a little nuance thing. A lot of people don't realize that in another form, through institutionalization, there's been a similar process that has impacted African Americans and Native Americans through indiscriminate taking of children away from their parents and putting them in the foster care system. For a short period of time, I was in the administration at the state level, just a few levels under when our colleague Ishmael Ahmed was running the Department of Human Services, and I was heading up the Racial Equity Disparities Committee, looking at the fact that many more African-American children and Native American children were taken away from their families, primarily based on economic issues. And then let's put in quotations, really racial questions. And that is an invisible kind of institutionalization of taking away children, maybe not under bars, but the legacy of all these children who have aged out of foster care, jumping from foster care home to foster care home, is part of that ongoing racial violence that has been going on for decades, and people don't talk about it. Yet we were trying to discuss that and explore that, what that meant. And there were some national studies. In fact, the state of Michigan was sued by a New Jersey-based children's rights organization. I mean, and I had the task of trying to partially answer that. I'm like, that was before me, saying that to myself. But, so I organized some colleagues to look at that. But as an epidemic, I doubt has subsided.
If I could add 2 things. One is that the oppressor, the primary tool is divide and conquer, right? And by othering each other and teaching us to other each other, where we don't see each other as human, that's their most effective weapon that they use against all of us. Yeah. And the second thing is that one of our most horrific institutions that has perpetuated racism is our prison system.
Oh, yeah.
And as there have been recent movements for criminal justice reform, which has caused more people to start thinking about the number of African Americans who are locked up in our prison system, right? Well, a lot of those prisons are run by private for-profit companies. So most of they were losing their economic base when they started releasing more people or not locking up as much people. So many of the current immigration laws were written verbatim by the lobbyists for that private for-profit prison system in order for them to keep generating profit. So we are still all part of that chattel of producing profit for a racist institution.
If I can jump in, there's a Netflix film called 13. And if you want to get some more detail on a quick, check out that film. It's excellent, but done by the woman that did When They See Us, the film on Central Park 5, which included African Americans and Latinos. A lot of people don't talk about that. Latino youth were also targeted, and that famous case that Trump became known for, stirring up that whole fear of minority youth.
Thank you, Angie, Ozzy, and Larry. There's a question related to who in the Detroit area or in Detroit are organizing protests. I'm going to ask Molly Sweeney if she can drop that information in the chat for folks. And then I'd like to invite Terry Whitfield back on to ask the last question of this segment.
Thanks, Christine. This question is going to go to Larry, but in this moment, I am recalling Philando Castile because I am a married husband to Shay Alicia Hicks Whitfield. Rev, would you please, the question that we have is, help us to make the connection between the Democratic Party and the police union. There seems to be an interesting connection between the two, and understanding your role in history in the city, you've got a unique perspective on that.
Well, there actually no longer is much of a connection between the police union and the Democratic Party. In the 1970s, throughout the 1970s and into the 80s, there was a repositioning of the two-party system in this country. And white males, union members that were dominated by white males, began to leave the Democratic Party. Leadership kind of hung around, but the membership left the Democratic Party because the Democratic Party was seen as being too brown and too female, advocating for affirmative action and other inclusionary policies. So today, you generally have police unions endorsing Republicans. Now, if you go back a century, when right after the Civil War, they were very much there weren't that many police unions, but policemen were Democrats because there was another similar shift in party alignment in the 1930s. So we've seen two big alignments in this country in the last 100 years. One was in the 30s under Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and again in the 70s under Nixon and the whole silent majority Southern strategy that the Republican Party mounted with the express intention of recruiting people with racial prejudice into their ranks. Everybody who's a Republican is not a racist, but they explicitly targeted, and so you had the shift in the South from Democratic officials to Republican officials. That was a way longer answer than I know you wanted, but you called on a preacher.
Well, not just a preacher, but a teacher. And it's in that context, certainly Ozzy and all of us are trying to share the benefit of our experiences that go over many decades. And our decades, we stand on the shoulders of other people's struggle. And thank you so much for bringing in the reality that we live in a nation that was stolen from the indigenous people who were here first. So our struggles connect, and there's so many more ways that we are connected. And through our knowledge, and if we are studying together, if we're analyzing together, if we are organizing together, then victory is going to be ours. Victory will come through this process as we seek our power and to use it. And fundamental to power and understanding is education. So we're going to kind of switch our tone a little bit now and ask you please to continue with us as we now make sure that we hear from our educational experts to learn more of what are the opportunities that are moving forward for the summer. And in particular, we're all so excited about the major efforts to reduce the digital divide with the new grants to DPSCD for technology. And we're hoping soon for all children, not only in the city of Detroit, but throughout the state of Michigan. So we'll be making this transition, and I'm really very pleased to have as our very first guest, Danielle Jackson. Danielle is the CEO for UPrep 990, a charter school network. Danielle, welcome.
Thank you. First, I have to say it's been such a moving experience to be bearing witness to all that has been said before me. I come to you as a daughter of Detroit. My dad is a retired police sergeant with the Detroit Police Department. I'm a wife of a retired sergeant for the Wayne County Police Department. And they both serve as great models to me on how policing can be an extension and within the community, and that you can engage with the community, leave them whole and alive while doing the work. And I'm remembering Trayvon Martin. I'm a mom of 3 men as a blended family, ages 19 to 30. And if you recall, part of Trayvon's backstory is that he was with his dad because he got in trouble in school. And so I think with the COVID-19 virus impacting and shuttering our doors, we have a unique opportunity to really rethink the way we deliver education to our students, including rolling back discipline policies and educational practices that really fly in the face of empowering and emboldening Black excellence. And so as we think about reopening, we get at the heart of one of our equity issues, and that's access to technology. We want to make sure that in our learning model, parents are armed with not only the physical technology, as in laptops and Wi-Fi support, but that we provide support to parents, teachers, and students to really access a blended learning model, because we know the science is telling us that we can see shutting down schools again is very likely in the fall. We also have to deal with health and safety. We know that COVID-19 impacted the city of Detroit disproportionately. And so our parents are looking to us to make sure that our precautions, such as PPE, social distancing measures, are in place so that they feel safe sending their children back to school in the fall. We're also considering engagement. We track how we're engaging with our families, and we want to make sure by listening to our parents during our reopening planning, we want to hear from our parents and learning how engagement works for them to make sure that we consider that in the future. The last thing I want to talk about is accelerating learning. It is not our children's fault that they are not in school right now in a traditional sense. And we don't want to use the term remediation. We want to use the term accelerate learning because we've had time out of school. So in our reopening plans, we are also examining how we restructure the content and skills that we're going to be teaching in the fall so that we minimize the impact of being away from brick and mortar. I'll end by saying that this is a unique opportunity for schools, and we are taking advantage of it. We have an opportunity to look at how we embolden culturally responsive education. We are looking at how we can embolden our babies to be civic activists, change agents for their community and their neighborhood. And it is incumbent upon us, as we're publishing our reopening plans, that we see evidence of that in the components that we share.
Danielle, thank you so much. And in particular, your sensitivity to talk about cultural effectiveness and that we are emboldening our children to be the leaders that we know they can be, and we want to assure that that occurs. And speaking of leaders that are committed to our youth and an intelligentsia that can move us forward as a nation and as a community, very pleased to have Misha Stallworth, who is a board member of DPSCD, to join us. She's also the CEO for Citizen Detroit. Misha, you're welcome. Please join us.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I am really happy to be here. I'm emotionally exhausted from the last week, so seeing you all here and being part of this conversation definitely helps to rebuild some of my energy. I really appreciate a lot of the thoughts that Danielle shared. I definitely agree with a lot of those thoughts. And I think from the district's perspective and being already in a position of reform and then coming into this place, this current moment in time, for me personally, I've been just extremely concerned about how we are able and equipped to do our due diligence to continue educating our children. It is not their fault that they don't have access to certain resources. It is not their fault that their homes are structured certain ways. It is not their fault that, you know, the history of the city and the history of this state set them behind for so many years. And so for me, when I think about the last 3 months and when I think about how we move forward, I just think that it is critical that everyone within the education community be willing to think creatively and be flexible and to really own that it is our responsibility to make sure they are educated, that if there is work that needs to be done again, that is not something that is punitive or about the student, that is about us taking on our responsibility and making sure that they get what they need during a time that is incredibly difficult so that they can still be equipped and prepared for the next stages of life. So those are a lot of the things that have been on my heart currently, and the district as a whole and the board, you know, we're trying to figure out how do we move forward safely, how do we continue to keep our students safe, how do we deliver education in a safe environment. We're so incredibly grateful to the community partners that helped us to get technology to all of the students within our district, and we're looking to build infrastructure around that so that it is sustainable, so that we continue to have access to technology for all students who engage with our district. And within that, you know, we will have summer school. We will make sure that students have access to summer school opportunities, and we're figuring out kind of the upcoming year. I think our district has a strong history and culture of social activism and social justice just among our staff and among our educational community. And so our students learn from that. I feel very humbled to be a part of that community and to be able to represent that community in my role. And I'm so proud of all of my students who have been getting active over the last few weeks, and since we have gone into quarantine, they are advocating on behalf of their communities, they're advocating on behalf of their peers, and it's a really beautiful thing to see. So, you know, for us as an organization, we have to make sure that we are continuing to equip them with the tools to do that well, to do it safely. I believe that we have to protect them from entities that would use their voices for their own purposes and not authentically empower students to express their own values and beliefs. And so for me, making sure that those opportunities are there for students to learn more about organizing, to learn more about social justice is really, really critical. And yeah, we're just, it's a funny thing, this moment, right? Everything feels so compounded. We were already fighting so hard to turn this district around, and then we get hit with so many different things all at once, and already within a system that's especially challenging for our community. So I'm I am starting to feel like I'm rambling, and therefore I will stop. I'm just happy to be here. I'm happy to see you all, and please, please, please just continue to support our kids.
Your rambling was wonderful, and it was still on point. And like you, many of us are emotionally exhausted, but we pull on, for those of us, our own faith and power to keep us moving forward, because our children, if nothing else, need us to show up and be authentic. So we'd like to continue this conversation with a focus on education by asking Michelle Richards if she would now join us.
Hello.
Hello, Michelle, and welcome.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure and an honor to be here today. I wanted to talk a little bit about what the state of Michigan is doing to support our families and our childcare providers to make sure that our young people have safe spaces this summer while their families return to school, return to work, return to all the activities that make our communities strong. I have been working for Governor Whitmer's team for the past few months, trying to make sure that families who have been working in essential jobs that have kept our communities open and strong, from grocery stores to hospitals and everyone in between, we've been working to make sure that their children have safe spaces while they return to work. That ranges from a formal childcare environment all the way to summer camp for families right now. So we know that as the governor has shifted the entire state of Michigan into the stage 4 of the My Safe Start plan, that means even more families are looking for options for their children for this summer. And we know that whether your baby is 12 months old or 12 years old, families have expectations for safety, and that's been a top priority of the state of Michigan, is making sure that families and child care providers, day camp operators, that all of us have a shared expectation of how we support our young people during this time. Starting Monday, day camp programs can reopen, and I know there's been tremendous work in the city of Detroit and in Southeast Michigan to reopen those programs for our school-age children. Effective right now, any family who needs childcare can access their typical childcare arrangement regardless of where you work. I know for the past few months there have been limitations on who can use childcare and when, but now any individual who's working, going to school, you're able to go back to your typical childcare provider. Like I said, our top priority has been making sure that those spaces are safe for our young people. We've been working with experts in public health and in the caregiving field to say, how do we ensure the maximum safety possible during COVID-19? So there's a few things we can all expect when we return to childcare, day camp, all of those types of environments that are different than we are used to and are going to take some getting used to for providers, but also for families and for children. So things like daily health screenings, confirming that children don't have fevers, checking to see if children and families have had exposure to individuals who are positive for COVID-19, checking for things like cough, nausea, checking the entire list of COVID-19 symptoms before you're able to come into that care environment. And that's to make sure that those staff members and all of the children and families that you're interacting with are as safe as possible as well. We're also working with providers to reconsider the types of activities that are maybe the hallmarks of our day camp or childcare environments, to say, how can we mitigate risk right now to make sure that those environments are as safe as possible for children? I completely recognize that the protocols we're working on are not always easy to implement. And we're doing everything we can from a state perspective to work with local partners and childcare providers and families directly to say, how can we support you to creating these safe spaces in light of COVID-19? I would really encourage families to ask your childcare provider what they're doing to protect children in their care. You as a family member have a really strong voice. We also think it's a really strong voice to tell providers that you want them to reopen. We know that it's taking time for many of our childcare providers and summer camp operators to reopen. Hearing from families in their community that they're a needed and essential part of your return to the new normal is a really important part of this. So call your childcare provider, call your day camp operator and say, I'm ready to return to work. My children are ready to come back into your care and we really need you. We also recognize in all of this that childcare is often a very large part of families' budgets. The child care subsidy is a tool we have in the state of Michigan to help families pay for care while you're working or in school. You can apply for that program still today. You apply through My Bridges. If you're a child care provider, we are here to support you with additional funding and resources to purchase things like cloth face coverings, cleaning supplies, and more. If you visit michigan.gov/childcare, we have resources to support you. And of course, want to highlight all of the resources in Detroit as well. We're grateful to be partnering with you and really grateful to be part of the conversation today. We think these early experiences, especially these quality early learning experiences, really put our children on a pathway to be the kind of contributing members of our communities and our society that we need, especially at a time like now.
Michelle, thank you so much. And your role as part of Governor Whitmer's team is really important. And we hope the audience recognizes you as a resource because we want to make sure in the midst of this pandemic that we are providing quality but healthy and safe environments for our children. And certainly the schools are doing the same. Christine, do we have any questions for Danielle, Misha, or Michelle?
We do. So this is for everyone. Will the district and charters support defunding and disinvesting from school police and security?
So I've been pretty consistent about this for the last few years and participated in one 4824 Forward panel in particular on this issue. I see safety and policing one way. Many folks in our communities have internalized the need for policing and safety in another way, in the ways that they think about what safety means, in the ways that they think about what is needed in our schools. I think a really good example is, one of the first things that I worked on as a school board member was reforming our code of conduct so that it would be less punitive, so that we reduce suspensions. And we received a lot of resistance from that, even in focus groups with students. Many of their initial reactions to what should happen when a certain kind of, offense occurs, and they kind of jump to expulsion. So what that tells me is that our community members have internalized a lot of ideas and a lot of beliefs that aren't necessarily racially just in the ways that we would like to see. And so, before jumping to obliterating everything, to me, I think it's about meeting our community where they are and talking about how we can reconceptualize what safety looks like while we start to adjust our system for a more racially just environment.
The only thing that I would add to that is that, in our schools, and UPrep schools in particular, we don't have a policing presence in our schools. We've really taken an approach to building strong community and leveraging restorative practices in our work. I mimic, however, the things that Misha's talked about in that we are combating mindset, quite frankly, and really pushing into this idea that suspension is not the first way, the only way for any and everything that happens. And I mentioned earlier how we began to roll back. I mean, the data tells us very clearly that our boys in particular are much more likely to receive harsher punishments, escalation in punishment or discipline, if you will, at rates far greater than our girls. And so we really need to, I holistically believe that we must push in our belief system and our mindsets around discipline in our schools. And this and remove this idea that the only way to get there is through policing, security, and practices like that.
Thank you both, and both stay on because this is another question for you. Will the online learning and teaching put kids behind when they return to the classroom?
I'll go ahead and go first since I'm unmuted. One of the hardest, and I'm telling you, one of the hardest parts of all of the COVID-19 impact was coming to this realization that learning has been interrupted, significantly interrupted. And there's just no two ways about that. In many ways, this caught us flat-footed. We were not prepared to move to a virtual learning model at all. We rely very heavily on the in-person delivery of teaching. And so we are, and again, as part of our reopening plans, we are really making a seed change in what learning looks like. And we must answer that question. I will tell you unequivocally, we will see impact with learning when we come back into the fall, but there's a deep commitment on our part to adjust for the future. It's not just about right now, but really adjusting for the future and what that looks like.
Yeah, definitely. I think as a district, this is something that I can say confidently on behalf of my colleagues and the folks that I work with, since I'm, one person on a board of 7, that our priority is to figure out how to deliver the most excellent education possible. Again, just like Danielle said, the level of disruption that has been experienced, and not just disruption from shifting from the classroom to this other place, but we have experienced so much death in this city. There is so much grief in this city. You cannot set aside that kind of emotional disruption. Households are shifting in ways that they've never shifted before. We see this correlation to an increase in domestic violence since we've been in our homes, right? So like disruption really is kind of like this perfect all-encompassing word for all of the different things that are being experienced. But for us, we're figuring out, okay, one size does not fit all in education. And so what are the resources that we have available to us? How can we be creative to make sure that we are delivering the most excellent education possible to all of our students? It would be a lie to say that something hasn't been lost. It would be a lie to say that there aren't students that are going to be coming in further behind than where they were when we started to stay in our homes. But we're committed to figuring out how we can deliver every single resource possible so that they can succeed.
If I could just add, we're recognizing that children are starting to return to some environments in just the next few weeks, right? School doesn't start for a few more months yet, but they're coming to summer camp, they're coming back to childcare, and we're working to give those professionals the tools that they need to be able to respond to the social emotional needs of the children who are coming into their care, so that they can give them as much momentum as they can to be able to respond to what's going on in their lives and in their communities, but also be as ready as they can when they return to their K-12 environment later this fall. So I think that's the first place that we're working to start. We're rolling some tools out to support those caregivers in the next few days.
Thank you. And Michelle, there's a person that has asked about recommendations for educational websites, daily schedules, goals, those kinds of things. If you could just make sure that you share with us what you're sharing with the providers, so that then we can share with the folks that are our audience today. And then and we'll make sure we get some more things out early next week as it relates to this question. Thank you both. There also was a question about a list or a place where parents can go that identifies programs that are reopening for this summer. So Michelle, I'm not sure if there's something at the state level. We are working at a citywide level, and the Discover Your Spark will be a place where parents can go and also United Way, but is there a place at the state level that parents can go to see what it will be reopened this summer?
Absolutely. We've partnered with Help Me Grow Michigan to be able to gather data about which providers are open and which ones are closed, and actually give you a real person to call and talk to help get connected. So the City of Detroit has been an amazing partner, United Way, many others, in getting that resource into Detroit, but in broader Southeast Michigan, we also have this, it's Help Me Grow Michigan. If you Google it, it'll be the first hit. I also shared the website with you, Christine. But if you fill out a really brief form about how old your children are, what kind of care you need, someone in your local community will call you and help you connect with one of those providers that is open right now.
Great, thank you. Thank you all for being here today. Your information was incredibly helpful and your words very inspiring. So thank you. Meta?
Yes, thank you. And I would just like to quickly say, and you'll hear more in next week, is that there is an effort across the entire city. A citywide planning group has been coming together all the way from services to children from pre-birth up to 18, to have a coordinated approach so that families can be assured that you're sending your children to places where people have been planned for, and there's health and a lot of safety that's part of that. And we'll be getting that out. I also want to let you know that there is a parent survey that will be sent out so that we can learn from parents your concerns, things that you would like to see based upon the pandemic or without the pandemic for the return for summer and fall. So please stay tuned for that. And while we're talking about parents, we'd like to make sure that you get to hear a very important voice, and that's the voice of Danielle Slaughter. Danielle is part of what we would call revolutionary parenting, and she heads up leadership development at Mothering Justice. Danielle, welcome.
Hi, my name is Danielle Slaughter, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what revolutionary parenting means and what it looks like now. Revolutionary parenting for me means not only providing children with the space to be free and have a say in their daily lives, but also not shielding them from the realities of the world we currently live in. This parenting style is hard on a good day, but it's even harder when you're living through a global pandemic and the start of a revolution. However, this is when you have to keep going. It's when you remind yourself that if we're ever going to have the world our children deserve, that it starts at home. So we have to continue having hard conversations with our children about white supremacy, patriarchy, and capitalism, and why we must work to dismantle these systems. Children have amazing imaginations. Use them. Talk about what a world free of these harmful systems looks like. Ask your children to draw pictures and write stories about their ideal worlds. Talk through what needs to happen for these worlds to exist. Then make a list as a family of what you can do to make it happen on an individual level. We all have something to give to the revolution, so play to your strengths. If we're all at the protest getting arrested, who's gonna bail us out? If we all lay down our lives, who will be left to tell our story? As a Black mother raising Black children, I try to remember to tell my children stories and show them images of past resistance. I want them to know that they come from a long line of rebellious folks, and we are just continuing that work because, in the words of Assata Shakur, it is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love each other and support each other. We have nothing to lose but our chains. And this doesn't mean that you can't find joy in the midst of these difficult times. Our ancestors did. How else will you survive without finding a glimpse of peace and joy each day? So part of revolutionary parenting is also making sure that your children find that joy. It means modeling what it looks like to have fun in the middle of chaos. It's okay to sing, dance, make art, play video games, or whatever else you need to do that does not bring harm to anyone else. My kids watch me find joy in painting, crocheting, playing The Sims 4. Finding joy is one way we stay alive when everything else sucks, and staying alive is our first goal whenever possible. As my husband reminded me when he gave our son a talk about being a young Black man in America. However, once you filled your joy bucket up and you've done what you can to stay alive, it's time to resist. Resistance will look different for everyone because remember, we're playing to our strengths. For me, resistance looks like channeling Ida B. Wells and writing the words that make people feel uncomfortable to read. It's making sure that my children live in a house that centers Blackness first. When my oldest son got into superheroes, I made sure to find him the Black Superman. So it could be the first action figure he had in the house. It means teaching my sons what it means to be a nurturer by buying them dolls, Black, feminine presenting dolls. So they learn to care for Black women with the tenderness they deserve, but are not often given. For you, it might look like standing up to your family at Thanksgiving dinner when they make racist, sexist, and/or homophobic jokes. It might mean standing up in a PTA meeting and insisting that we consider all the children when we're making decisions. For all of us, it should mean disrupting the systems as much as we can on a regular basis. You can and should be a revolutionary parent every single day and not just when the world is burning. Thank you for having me.
And thank you, Danielle, because everything that we're doing is about nurturing our children to bring forth the leadership and the legacy that we have to leave for them, but we have to expose them to it. So thank you so much for lifting up about how important, if you can control the image, you control the mind.
Absolutely.
So speaking of images, the reality is now everyone is talking about reopening. What does that mean? We are still in the midst of a pandemic. So there are important and critical health considerations. And within that context of health, we're delighted to have back with us again, Crystal Hepburn from our Detroit Health Department to give us cues to better understand how we stay safe and healthy even while reopening. Welcome, Crystal.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me once again. I bring great news from the Detroit Health Department. We do see our statistics, they are dropping. And as such, the governor has gone ahead and allowed us to go ahead and reopen with many of our services. You can see here currently as of yesterday in Detroit, we have 11,119 positive cases and 1,381 deaths. We want to continue to slow down the spread, especially as our businesses are opening. We want to make sure that we are still taking the same precautions to protect our health. Continue to wear a mask, social distance, continue all of your hand hygiene. Okay. Moving on, we want to make sure that everyone is aware that testing facilities are available for all Detroit residents. An appointment must be made at 313-230-0505. It is a multilingual line if needed, as well as transportation is available for request. There are many other locations in Detroit, so if you are looking for something a little bit closer to you, please feel free to call our DHD Outbreak 24-hour a day, 7-day a week hotline at 313-876-4000 and press number 1. Moving on, next, as we are reopening, the City of Detroit and the Health Department has put together some great guidance and best practices. Whoops, we'll just move on one more slide. With that, the City of Detroit has a small business playbook that has guidance, signage, some FAQs on how to provide safety to your current work environment, as well as to the clients that you're going to be serving. Through that particular guidance publication, it doesn't matter whether or not you are a small business, camps, additional information is available there. The Detroit Health Department is here to support you and your needs. I understand that coming shortly, we will also have some additional faith-based guidance available. continuing to go ahead and provide services through the community. The City of Detroit's Health Department does have some resources available if individuals need personal protective equipment. Please contact us. And again, we want to make sure that we are following the guidance from the executive order, making sure that we are continuing our safety precautions, monitoring ourselves and our family members and our health. Indoor gatherings are now available up to 10 people, as long as social distancing is available. Outdoor gatherings should be no more than 100 people, again, maintaining your distance. If you are going to participate in any type of a march or protest, we highly, highly encourage that. However, be safe for yourself and for those around you. Make sure that you have a disposable or a cloth mask covering your nose completely as well as your mouth, making sure that it's comfortable, breathable, and maintain your social distancing. We do look forward to having everything reopen in Detroit. We have our phone number, and many of our trusted resources and guidance details are available on our website. That website is detroitmi.gov/health. Anything related directly to coronavirus is detroitmi.gov/coronavirus. Again, we are still monitoring our hotline 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in addition to our email address at dhdOutbreak@detroitmi.gov. With that, if you are looking for particular guidance for your facility, please let us know. Based on the type of environment that you are working within, there is additional guidance, perhaps by MyOSHA, especially food handlers and safety. You may want, as a consumer, to check out the information. So when you're preparing to go to some of these facilities, you're aware of what the businesses are doing to protect you and to provide you with the services. We are so excited that we have now reached that phase in which we are reopening. It's very encouraging. Detroit's done a fabulous job getting the numbers down, but we do want to make sure that it stays down and does not continue to go up. Thank you very much, Jametta, and everybody on the phone line for all that you do every day.
And Crystal, thank you and all at the Detroit Health Department. This has been a really heavy lift because we know traditionally public health has not been funded at the level that it needs. And in this pandemic, all of you have been stretching yourselves, and we're so delighted that you've continually been part of educating us. So
Wonderful.
We've been having a point now. I do believe we might have a few questions. Christine, do we have any questions for health? Okay, it looks like the
yeah, not at this time, Jametta, not at this time.
Okay, thank you. So Crystal, it looks like you're off the hook for the moment, but, but
Thank
we
you.
all know how to reach you, and we want to emphasize that if you have questions, parents, you need to know what you should be looking for when you go to that child care center, when you go to the summer camp, when you go to the schools, and ask them what are they doing to make sure that your child is safe and healthy. So as we talk about health, Misha, you raised the reality that we're seeing neglect and abuse begin to move up. We know that all of us in this moment, not only from what's going on nationally, but the reality of the losses that we are experiencing through COVID, has many of us absolutely needing some place and some way, in addition to prayer, to how to come together, to center ourselves, to gain the power to continually keep our joy and do our work. And to help us with that is Kimberly Boyd, again coming back to us from Spirit-Filled Yoga and Wellness. Kimberly.
Thank you, Jametta. Good afternoon, everyone. It is my absolute honor and pleasure to hold this space for you as a mom, as a community member, and as a healer. And so it's been kind of coming back to me that there's some questions about yoga and whether or not the yogic practices are meant to keep us in a passive place. And I'm here to let you know that I Breathe sometimes for the cause I fight, because every tool is a weapon if you use it right. Thank you, Ana DeFranco. In this time where we have yet again witnessed a death that was preambled by the words, I can't breathe. Know that when you cannot breathe, you cannot have access to the ability to move your power forward from a conscious place. And so in this time when we are all feeling absolutely exhausted on top of exhausted, we have to think about self-care and restoration as the revolutionary act that's going to absolutely allow us to harness and channel our power in the direction that we want it to go. So in those moments when we are offered strategies that allow us to get grounded by placing your feet flat on the earth and sitting up straight so that you can take a full breath in, it is absolutely so that we can then move forward with a clear mind in order to direct our power where we want it to go. Let's do a little experiment. When I say go, what I invite you to do is to make a shape with your body where your torso is bent and everything is clenched and tight. Make sure that you are folded or twisted or bent in some way, right? And anybody who's on the line who's willing to open the camera so people know that I'm not the only one doing this, I invite you to do that now. And while we're getting into that position, right, I want you to try to breathe. Notice what it's like to attempt to breathe when your back is tight, your neck is tight, your fist is tight. Stay there a little bit longer. Stay a little bit longer. And now release it, let it go, sit up tall. And now try to breathe. What do you notice? This were a lesson in school. I would invite us to a Venn diagram where we would compare and contrast the difference between what it's like to try to breathe and to think when your body is clenched and what it's like to breathe and think when your body is relaxed. This is why it's important to be able to pay attention to where you are. In my practice as a yoga teacher and a yoga therapist, the reason why we want you to be able to have access to your breath is so that you can make a conscious decision about where to direct your power next. Experiment number 2. Take a nice easy breath in, bring all of your energy in towards your body, and then now as you exhale, press it away. And notice what that's like. Try it again. Choose another direction. Inhale and exhale. Choose another direction. And again, inhale and exhale. And rest your bodies. In that moment, you were able to make a series of improvisational decisions in the moment, right? Because you were clear-minded and could focus your attention and awareness to send that energy, that power in the simple movement of your arms anywhere you wanted to go. The reason why we practice now is because one of my great teachers says, the time to learn to swim is not when we are drowning. It is not a good idea. So we practice knowing where we are and sitting up straight and tall and taking a nice easy breath in and filling and fueling our mind and body to relax, to restore, so that when we return from the fight, we don't stay clenched and tight. We'll be too exhausted for the next one. And there's another one coming in, and I need everybody ready. So right here, right now, together as a whole community, once again, take a nice easy breath in. And as you exhale, blow it out.
Okay.
Peace. Jamila?
I am going to thank you, Sister Kimberly, for helping us. I want to give you an analogy. In the poem that Jamila read to us from Langston Hughes, which he wrote in 1951 as part of an anthology, he concluded the poem by saying, does it explode? Our normal reaction to explosion is that it is a negative, that it's a bad thing. But I want everyone here to realize that you are utilizing controlled explosion every day. When you get in your car and turn the key, what's happening in front of you in that engine compartment are a series of explosions, one after the other. And those explosions, because they are controlled, contained, and focused, become a tool that gets us from where we are to where we want to go. So as you practice the art that Kimberly is directing us in, don't think of it as something to pacify you. Think of it as something like the engine in your car, like the car around you, as the vehicle that gets your energy, your anger, your rage, your fury focused, like a martial artist, like an athlete, to do the best you can do in the moment when you need it. Thank you, Kimberly. As always, you are great in leading us to another level. Jametta?
Yes, and thank you, Larry, also for helping to lead us to another level. We hope our entire audience feels our joy at being able to be of service to you, because that's why we are here. We are here always to present facts, resources, support, and love, because we need love to do the work. We need love and joy and knowledge to be powerful. So in the spirit of La Lucha Continua, the struggle continues, we'd like to ask everyone to open up their video so the audience can see all the faces, because all of us are a part of this work. All of us and our voices are needed to carry us forward. All of us need to be allies and warriors and front and back and front and back, and to struggle continuously. But know this, no one can take away our knowledge. No one can take away our joy. And with that, we'd like to say to you, in the context of this struggle, of this moment right now, again, Black lives matter. Black lives matter.
Is that a call to us?
Black lives matter.
Black lives matter.
Lives matter. Black lives matter.
Black lives matter.
See, that's next.
Matter.
And in that, we say enough. Thank you, everyone. Again, we want to let you know this is the wrap up. Yes, Wakanda forever. Okay. We want to let you know that we have chats. Some of you have asked questions, and we have resources. And now we'll be working together to make sure you have this information, that you have a list of books, you have a list of films that can empower you and empower your children, so we can take control of the destiny that we have before us. I'd like to open it up before we close if we have any more questions that have come through, because we have just a few minutes and we would love to hear from you. Text 313-288-2082 or the Facebook chat. We've had powerful voices, and we know there are more out there with you. Christine, do we have any more questions or comments?
Not at this time. But we just gave people the number. So let's just.
Okay, so you have our number. Again, 313-288-2082. Thank you, Coalition, for blessing me to be able to share my love and legacy with you, and to the city of Detroit, my home, my people, our nation, our world. Have a wonderful and productive day. The struggle continues.
Lucha continua.
Goodbye, all.
Bye.